Welcome to the workshop for Cardiff and the Vale's work-related stress risk assessment guidance for managers. This workshop will go over information on stress in the workplace and also introduce and explain the updated version of the Health and Safety Executive's stress risk assessment form. This can help you to feel more confident when dealing with employee stress in your teams and departments. This workshop will be split into two parts. In part one of this workshop, we will look at an overview of stress and work-related stress, and also some of the possible symptoms and signs of stress in the workplace. This will also include a case study activity. In part two of this workshop, we will be looking at the Health and Safety Executive Management Standards and also introduce the work-related stress risk assessment tool. So what is stress? Take a moment here to write down how you would define stress. Stress is defined as an organism's total response to environmental demands or pressure. Stress in humans results from the interactions between a person and their environment. If we perceive that the demands of our environment outweigh our own capabilities, then we will experience stress. The important word here is perceive, as different people will perceive different situations as stressful. This is very individual. It's important to note that stress is not an illness, but instead is a state of being. Stress is a normal response to change in our environment. However, if stress is prolonged, it can contribute to both mental and physical illness, such as anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, among others. Although we will be focusing on work-related stress at this workshop, it's important to note that work-related and personal stress can often become intertwined and difficult to disentangle. For example, the stress you're experiencing at work could affect your personal life as well, and vice versa. Is stress something different to pressure? And if so, how is it different? Take a moment to write down how you think stress differs from pressure. So how does stress differ to pressure? Well, pressure can be a positive and motivating factor and is often essential in our job roles and workplaces, as it can help us achieve our goals and perform better. However, when that pressure becomes excessive, that is when stress can occur. And remember, stress is a natural reaction to too much pressure and is something that we can all experience. If you have a look at the graph at the bottom of this page, you can see that when the pressure becomes too much, we're in the red zone. Here, we feel stressed out. We feel that we may not be able to cope as the demands that we're experiencing outweigh our capabilities, and we may start to feel overwhelmed. And that's when our performance can go down as well. If this is prolonged, that's when this stress can lead to other problems such as anxiety and depression. It's also important to note that too little pressure or no pressure at all in our workplace can also lead to stress, as we can become bored and demotivated. Perhaps we feel that our skills aren't being utilised, and again, that is something that can lead to stress. Where we want to be is the green zone in the middle, which is called the feel-good zone. And this is where we're at our peak performance. We feel motivated in the flow, and the amount of pressure that we're experiencing suits our level of performance. Now let's have a look at work-related stress. The Health and Safety Executive's formal definition of work-related stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demands placed on them at work. We'll often hear that work is good for you, which is true, but it's important to emphasize that it's good work that is good for us. It's about noticing what is and what isn't good work. For example, if an employee feels that they're not well supported at work, or perhaps they have a poorly designed job role which hasn't been explained to them properly, then this is not good work. So it's important to have the caveat that good work is good for us. Interestingly, after there's been poorly managed change that has taken place in the workplace, it's not until 6 to 12 months later where there's usually a spike in reported stress. That's quite a while after the change has taken place. This could be because that as the change has taken place, employees are just struggling through and trying to go with the flow. And although they may be showing signs of stress, they may not notice this within themselves. And it's not until 6 to 12 months later where employees will start to notice the effect that stress has had on them as a result of this poorly managed change. We now know that a person experiences stress when they perceive that the demands of their work are greater than their ability. We also know that stress can result from having too few demands, as people can become bored, feel undervalued, and lack recognition. Therefore, it's important that an employee's capabilities, their skills, and knowledge are balanced with the demands and pressures of their jobs. This way, employees will feel that they're able to cope with the demands of their job roles and will be at peak performance. It's also important to note that this balancing scale should be flexible. We all experience down days and can go through stressful periods in our personal lives, which can affect how we perceive our own capabilities and the demands and pressures of our job in our workplace. What is the impact of stress in the workplace? Take a minute to think about this and write down your answers. At an organisational level, stress is linked with high levels of sickness absence, staff turnover, and reduced morale and performance, including making more errors. Also, the sickness absence of one employee due to stress can cause a domino effect, where as a result of that one employee being on sick leave, this can lead to increased workload, pressure, and stress in other members of the team, who as a result may also feel they need to go off on sick leave due to stress. Let's have a look at some facts and figures. According to the Health and Safety Executive, in 2017 to 2018, 15.4 million UK working days were lost due to work-related stress, depression, or anxiety, and 595,000 UK workers were suffering from work-related stress, depression, or anxiety. If we have a look at Cardiff and the Vale, their sickness rate for the 12-month period between October 2018 to September 2019 was 5.19%, at a cost of around £20.14 million. Of that sickness rate, 28.6% was attributed to anxiety, stress, depression, or other psychiatric illnesses, at a cost of around £5.58 million. No one is immune to stress, and anyone can experience it at any level in the workplace. And whilst it is not confined to particular sectors or jobs, research has shown that certain job sectors have a higher incidence of stress. Take a moment to see if you can think what sectors these might be and why? The sectors that show the highest instances of stress are health and social care, education, public administration and defence, and the financial sector. Is this what you thought? There are lots of reasons as to why this could be. It's interesting to note that when working in these sectors, people are often dealing with members of the public and may have gone into these areas of work as they are motivated to help other people, such as in the NHS, schools, or the police. And perhaps while they are good at looking out for other people, they may not be as good as looking out for themselves. Other reasons as to why this may be is that there may be a perceived lack of control. People may feel overworked or underpaid, or lots of other reasons. As a manager, you have a duty and legal obligation to ensure that work does not make your team ill. Just like it's important to keep your team physically safe, we also have an obligation to ensure that we're keeping our team mentally well as well. Understanding how to spot the signs of stress in your team and knowing what to do to reduce this stress can help you achieve this. There are lots of factors that can influence the stress response in people. Take a moment now to write down what factors you might think influence the stress response, either in a person themselves or in their lives. Here are some of the factors that can influence a person's stress response. Some of these factors may be fixed and can't be changed, such as a person's age, race, disability, or background. Other factors may be more fluid and can change month by month or even day by day, such as a person's skills and experience or their personal circumstances. This list, however, is not exhaustive, and it's important to remember that other demands, both inside and outside of work, can influence a person's stress response. If we look at the graph to the right of this slide, we are reminded how the demands placed on an employee can affect their performance. If the demands placed on an employee meet their perceived capabilities, this will mean optimum performance. However, as a manager, it's important to make the changes that we can before the employee gets past the tipping point and starts to feel overloaded, anxious, or burnt out. Take some time now to write down the possible emotional, cognitive, and behavioral signs of stress in an individual. This table shows some common signs of stress in individuals, including emotional, cognitive, and behavioral signs. It's important to remember again that this list is not exhaustive and different people will respond to stress in different ways. One person may show all of these signs, while another may only show one or two. Our ways of responding to stress is unique and individual to each person. Stress can also show itself in a group setting. Take some time and have a think about what possible signs of stress you may notice in a team. Here are some of the possible signs of stress in a group or team. Disputes within the group, an increase in staff turnover, complaints and grievances, in sickness absence, and in reports of stress. All of these could result in difficulty attracting new staff if this team is known for a stressful environment. It could be poor performance or customer dissatisfaction or increased complaints. All of these factors could indicate that this is a team under stress. The following case study videos show the story of Dan, a housing officer. The first video shows how Dan was experiencing stress and the effects of excessive pressure. The second video shows 3 months later with either no action taken by the manager or with positive actions taken by the manager. For video 1, have a think about how Dan's issues started and what signs of stress did he experience. For video 2, have a think about what prevented Dan from getting support and what were some of the positive steps that were taken by the manager. You can find these YouTube links in the description box below. In video 1, Dan tells us how he enjoys his job as a housing officer and he enjoys helping people. And although there were pressures in his job, he felt that he could cope with these okay with the help of his team. However, Dan then starts to tell us that how over the course of 6 months, he starts to experience stress and starts to feel overwhelmed. He describes this as a gradual process and that he didn't notice the signs of stress at first. The different changes that were made is that a number of his experienced colleagues left and a new manager started who didn't have much experience of working in housing. As a result, he changed the way that employees did things and implemented new protocols that made things more difficult for employees. And it sounds like Dan didn't have much control or much choice in the implementation of these protocols. We also learn that Dan was also experiencing stress at home as he was going through some relationship problems. What signs did Dan experience? Dan talks about continually thinking about work even when he was at home and feeling guilty about the clients that he couldn't help, perhaps because of these new protocols that were in place. He explains how he wasn't sleeping and how he was drinking to help himself get to sleep, and he was often late for work.
In video 2, we see what has happened with Dan 3 months later, either when no action was taken or when positive action was taken. What do you think prevented Dan from getting support? Dan mentions that he can't face work, he can't stop worrying about what his colleagues may think, and that they haven't made any communication with him. It's interesting that if someone is off with a broken leg, there's flowers and get well soon cards, but with stress or well-being, the belief is that we should not intrude. Dan also mentions some of the positive steps that were taken. And in contrast, how is Dan feeling now? He's feeling supported, listened to, happier, and a lot less doubt. Dan was able to open up and talk through the aspects of the role that he was struggling with and to work out where he could best help. And the manager also had some support on what he could do as a manager and looked at the team as well. It is also worth mentioning that these case studies do show extremes. Life is more complicated in reality, and this is just an idealised version. It is not always as rosy as that. But this is an example of what can happen when we engage or don't engage with the signs of stress.